Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston Station, we're ready for the event.
Military Times, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is the Military Times. How do you hear me?
Loud and clear, Military Times. Hello, great to be with you today, and welcome aboard to the International Space Station.
Hi, Commander Cassidy. This is Tony Lombardo, the managing editor of Navy Times. Thanks for agreeing to talk with us today. My first question.
Yeah, my pleasure, Tony. It's great to be with you.
My first question to you is, can you take just a minute and explain to me what a typical day in the life at the space station is like? What kind of job are you doing up there?
Yeah, exactly. So we wake up around 6 or so, and we have a morning daily conference with the ground teams around the world at roughly 7:15, 7:30. In that first hour is all the normal things you do on Earth. You know, wake up, go to the bathroom, clean yourself up, eat some things, and prepare a little reading for what you're about to tackle for the day. And then during the day, we close out the day at 7:30 p.m. with another daily conference. In between that time, we're doing science experiments, our personal health and fitness with a couple hours of exercise, eating lunch, and maintenance on the space station, and any other things that come up unplanned that need attention. And then we wrap up the day what we call pre-sleep, and that's analogous to the time that you spend on Earth after you finish work and you drive home, you go to the grocery store, you go home and relax with your family, watch some TV, read a book, and then go to bed. And we have a couple of hours of that in the evening where we typically look out the window and talk with each other and things like this. So that's our day. And we go to bed around 10:30 at night.
Okay. As a Navy SEAL, you're up there representing the Defense Department. How would you say what you're doing is advancing the U.S. military mission?
Well, if you look at the astronaut office, we're about half military, half civilian. So any given time, you'll have a military uniform wearing astronaut up here. In fact, not only from the United States, but my crewmate Luca Parmitano is an Italian Air Force officer and pilot. So, you know, what we're doing up here is not necessarily military in nature, but I think what the military brings is pretty substantial to being a good crewmate, an effective astronaut, and understanding how to work in an operational environment. Because that's what we have here is an operational environment. We're every day doing things that could impact the health of the station, or in some cases our own personal health, and to be able to understand all that and talk on the radio and work with the ground teams is very much what we're used to from our military training.
You mentioned your Italian crewmate. What other foreign countries are represented up there, and what specifically are you learning from them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now on board, we have myself and Karen Nyberg, our NASA U.S. astronauts. Luca Parmitano is an Italian astronaut from the European Space Agency, and we have 3 Russian cosmonauts, Pavel, Fyodor, and Sasha. And all together, what we learn together is just interaction, good interaction. Much like if you do a joint training exercise or go into a joint combined task force or something overseas, you realize that everybody speaks a little bit differently in their own language, and maybe their acronyms are different, but when you get down to the individual soldier, sailor, airman, or in this case astronaut, cosmonaut, we're all cut from the same breed, and we all have the same sense of humor, and we're all just trying to get through our day without making mistakes and doing the best we can. And that's the bottom line. That's what I've learned, is that internationally we're all training for the same mission, and we're basically the same guys. We're in slightly different uniforms and with different accents.
Okay. What career advice would you offer to a service member looking to get into the space program?
I'm often asked that, and the best advice I ever got was to just keep on doing jobs and taking sets of orders that you're satisfied with within your military career, because when you do that, you'll tend to do them well, and you'll enjoy your military career, and if by the chance you get selected to become an astronaut and work in the space program, then that's all great, but that's based on a foundation of hard work and doing well in your military chosen career field. And that was the case with me. I really enjoyed my time in the SEAL teams. And I knew that it was a long shot to get selected. During my interview process, I realized just how many really, really good people there are out there, and I just was really lucky to get picked. So if I had continued on in my SEAL team career, that would have been fine too, because I thoroughly enjoyed what I was doing there.
What's been your most fulfilling experience so far in space, and what's been your most challenging?
Well, that's a good question. I think the most fulfilling and most challenging could be the same thing. I personally really enjoy the spacewalks that I've done, and I feel very privileged that I've been able to be a part of 3 since I've been up here on this particular mission. And we had a really challenging episode on the last one where Luca had a technical problem with his suit, and that was very challenging to deal with it in real time, but also very rewarding and very fulfilling to see the whole team, the ground team, the onboard folks that were inside the space station, and Luca and myself outside, all working together to make quick decisions and bring him in as fast and safely as we could to get his helmet off. He had water leaking inside his helmet. So that was a really challenging situation, and in retrospect, one of the more rewarding and fulfilling ones I've had.
Most of us here on Earth will never get a chance to do a spacewalk. Can you describe what that experience is like?
Well, first and foremost, if you took your toes and went to the top of a skyscraper and put your toes over the edge of the skyscraper and leaned over, your brain would tell you, "What are you doing? You're crazy. Back off. You're going to fall." And that's kind of the sensation that you have when on your first spacewalk, when you open the hatch and you're looking right down at the Earth. Even though we've been looking out the window here on the space station, it's just somehow it's psychologically different when it's just your helmet and you look down. Once you get over that initial, it only takes a minute or a couple of minutes to realize that you're not going to fall and everything's going to be okay. And then you start going to work. And there's a very refined timeline, a script of the pace of work that we need to do. So in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, are we working on the timeline? Are we ahead? Are we behind? What do we have ahead of us? What challenges could be there? And so for me, it was a lot like in some of the missions that I've done in my military career, where if things are going well, you're always in your back of your mind thinking, all right, what is around the corner that's going to prevent us from finishing? What little gotcha have we not thought about? And how can we posture ourselves to deal with that quickly and still get all of our jobs done? And that's kind of the mindset that I have during spacewalks. And then every now and then I have to stop and relax and just look and see and take in the breathtaking beauty of where I am, out with one hand on the very far edge of the port side of the space station, for example, looking all the way down across the space station and down to the Earth, and trying to capture that in my mental picture, in my mind's eye, to capture forever and ever.
Okay, Commander. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and this has been great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for the reporting on the Navy Times. I enjoy that magazine a lot.
Okay. Stay safe up there.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the Military Times portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from WBUR-FM.
And station, this is WBUR-FM. How do you hear me?
Hello there in Boston. Great to be with you, and welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Hey, Commander Cassidy, it's Anthony Brooks in Boston. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're very grateful to have you. And I got to say, this is the first time my voice has been in outer space, as far as I know. So I'm very excited about this interview.
Well, Anthony, it sounds just like it does in Boston, I think.
Let me ask you this, Commander Cassidy. When you return home next month, you will have been in space for 6 months, which is, I think, hard for a lot of people on Earth to imagine what that feels like. What's the biggest challenge about being away from Earth for so long?
Well, there's several ways to answer that question. One is on the personal level. You know, we miss our family and friends and our loved ones on the ground, and that's a big part of it. We're all of us that are up here when it's time to return. That's one of the first things we think about is our family, friends, and loved ones. Second to that would be some of the pleasant things that each of us have on Earth. For me, it's been the summertime right now, so I realize that I've missed the smell of fresh cut grass and just being outside in the summertime and going to the beach and that sort of thing. So those types of things that you can just do on Earth are a few of the examples that I'm really looking forward to when I get back.
Commander Cassidy, quick question. You know, we're following where you are right now online, and I think when I started talking to you, you were somewhere over Senegal. I'm wondering if you can just give me a sense of your view. What are you seeing? What do you see when you look out the window?
Well, right this second, I don't exactly know, but for instance, the best way for me to describe it is if you don't see the whole entire Earth. We're about 250 miles above the surface of the Earth. So if you sat in your car, your driver's seat of your car, and you sort of drew a long horizon across the windshield, that would be what we see, the horizon of the Earth. And for instance, we can see all of Florida when we're over it. You see the whole state of Florida and partially up the East Coast. When we come across the Mediterranean, as we go through the Straits of Gibraltar, you can see Italy and its boot there, and we watch that a lot with Luca here. So that kind of gives you an appreciation of the amount of territory, the amount of land that we can see. You can see the whole Mediterranean, for instance, and when you come across the Persian Gulf, you can see all the sand that's all around that whole region, and then the really beautiful, lush green Nile River Delta right in the middle of all that. So there's some really breathtaking views to be seen on our planet.
Well, speaking of breathtaking views, Commander, I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit about what it's like to walk in space. This is something that, as a kid growing up and trying to imagine what it's like to be in outer space, that sort of inspires the imagination. What's it like to step outside of a spaceship and into space like that?
Well, at first it's really intimidating. You know that there's a lot of people that put a lot of hard work into building whatever piece of equipment, whatever piece of hardware you're about to install or repair. And there's a sensation of not wanting to do anything to mess up the chances of that being installed successfully. Aside from that, you mentioned walking in space, but I should add that there's really not much walking involved. In fact, our legs just sort of drag along and don't do much of anything. It's all done with your hands. So it's hand over hand across a path of handrails, and we always have a safety tether connected back to the airlock hatch. It's kind of like a dog leash with a little slow pull. So if you fell off, nobody ever has, and we don't want to test it, but if you did, it would pull you slowly back to where the airlock hatch is. But we always keep our hands on, and when we get to a work area, we clip in so we can be nice and safe and secure in that local area, in that region right around where we're about to work. But while you're working on the piece of equipment, always in the corner of your eye, you can see the Earth below you flying by. Or when it's nighttime, for instance, you see nothing but what your headlights illuminate, like maybe a 3-foot diameter circle right in front of you. So as we go around the Earth every 90 minutes, 45 minutes in the day, you see the Earth below you, dangling beneath your feet, and at night you see absolutely nothing, total pitch darkness. So it's really an interesting place to work.
But what's it like the first time you step out into space? I've got to imagine that it's like stepping off of a mountaintop or off of a skyscraper. Is there part of you that has to sort of suck it up and just sort of say, take the plunge, man, take the plunge?
Yes, that's exactly right. I was just telling the folks before I was talking to you that it's my experience was as if I had just walked up to the edge of a skyscraper and tilted my head over the side, and my brain was telling me, no, what are you doing? You're too close. In fact, this is a kind of a funny story. On my very first spacewalk on my shuttle mission, there happened to be a piece of a drink straw that had floated into our airlock, and when I opened the hatch, this piece of trash, the drink straw, flew right past my head, and I saw it go out the corner of my eye, and then I watched it kind of spiral its way down to the Earth, and I remember thinking, I don't want to be that drink straw, so hold on tight.
Commander, you mentioned your Italian colleague there in the space station, Luca Parmitano, and I know you had a few really tense moments during a spacewalk with Luca Parmitano when his helmet began filling with water, which was potentially a very dangerous situation. Tell us briefly what happened and what you had to do to take care of it.
So at about 45 minutes or an hour into our spacewalk, Luca noticed, or he started to feel water on the back of his head. And we were trying at first to figure out what the source was. We have a drink bag of water that we wear inside the suit right on our belly, and we thought it might have been that. The bag maybe have exploded open or something, but he realized it wasn't this. And the water had a funny taste to it, which indicated that it was sort of a technical water that coming from the backpack, which is used to cool ourselves. Our long underwear has these cooling lines woven into it. So this cold water that gets cooled in the backpack as it interacts with a thing called a sublimator to keep the water cold, and it keeps our body cold and then carries the heat back and rejects it to space. Otherwise, we'd get really hot. Anyways, so in that cooling water system, there was somehow a leak coming into his suit, and the leak was putting the water right on the back of his head. And as that water bubble got bigger and bigger and bigger, at one point it got into his communications cap, and then the surface tension of the water just kind of pulled it all around his whole head. And though that same surface tension kept the water bubble on his head instead of that water floating around inside the comm cap. Well, as the water grew, it started to go over his eyes and his ears and eventually got close to his nose and then onto his nose once we got into the airlock. And so when he first noticed it and I came up to him and looked, I could see that the water was growing, and together with the ground team, we decided it was time to end that spacewalk and send him back. Well, as luck would have it, or unluck would have it, it became nighttime at that point, and Luca had to go back to the airlock at night with very low visibility because of the water sloshing around, and hardly any communications because the water was getting onto his communication microphones. So anyways, that was the most tense moment right when he went back until we met up together again at the airlock and closed the hatch and started the repressurization to get his helmet off. And we were communicating to each other with hand signals because he couldn't talk very well. And I was watching his face and his mouth to make sure that he had good access to air. But once we got the hatch open, the Russian crew and Karen were right there to get his helmet off and execute a nice suit removal quickly.
Well, Commander, I'm glad that worked out for Luca Parmitano. Let me ask you one last quick question. You mentioned the Russian crew. The first time you went into space, you traveled aboard a U.S. space shuttle. This last time you rocketed into space on a Russian rocket. You'll be returning home with the Russians. How does that compare with the U.S. shuttle? What's that experience like?
Well, first and foremost, all the books are in Russian, and there's a guy talking to you on the other side of the radio who's speaking in Russian, unlike in the shuttle where all the books are in my native language and the guys on the radio are all speaking English. So that was one hurdle to get over. But aside from that, it's really more about the size of the vehicles. I would equate the space shuttle to be like a big pickup truck, king cab pickup truck, lots of cargo in the back. Kind of a nice cushier ride, and you have a couple rows of seats in the front. Whereas the Soyuz is a small little race car, where you just get the people and a soft bag of toiletries or something that can go along on your trip. And then because of that, when you're driving a sports car, for instance, you feel all the turns. And I remember on this most recent launch, as right off the pad, as the vehicles tried to vector in on its heading, I could feel those small little course changes as the vehicle honed in on the right way to go. Whereas in the shuttle, it's such a more massive vehicle. I don't remember feeling those quick nuances in the heading changes. So quite different because of the mass of the vehicle. And then coming home will be a lot different because we'll land under parachute in the Soyuz, and on the space shuttle it was much like an aircraft landing with wings on a runway. So a couple key differences. Neither one is more right or wrong, they're just different. And I'm really thankful to have both experiences.
Well, Navy Commander Chris Cassidy, he's from York, Maine. He's the flight engineer aboard the International Space Station. Commander Cassidy, thanks so much for joining us. Stay safe and safe travels, and maybe we'll talk to you when you get back to Earth in September.
Okay, my pleasure. Great talking to you again, and go Patriots.
All right.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Military Times and WBUR-FM. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.